The Death Mage Who Doesn't Want a Fourth Time. Chapter 67. The First Mission. Good afternoon, King. Documents. It doesn't need to be said that they wouldn't exist without materials for writing. Tree bark, branches, and animal skins can be used, but Vandaloo was looking at documents made of paper created by the Golem factory that he had set up. Looking at this, Vandaloo wondered why he had made straw paper, regretting his decision.
Well, I suppose desk work is necessary as well.
Though things would surely be easier in the future if he got used to this now. He would be able to gain popularity and respect as a man capable of finishing his work quickly, though it seemed that strong men capable of hunting monsters were the popular ones in Lambda. He decided to deal with the documents for now. He quickly checked over them, and as long as he saw no problems, he stamped it with a seal that he had made earlier.
It's done, said the multiple heads of Vandaloo, who had split them and his arms into multiples.
Your Majesty, could I ask you to teach me this method of doing desk work? Despite having done desk work for much longer, Cesare requested instruction from Vandaloo.
I don't mind teaching you, but in your case it would be faster if I multiplied your arms and heads physically, said Vandaloo. Should I start the surgery today?
No, please leave it for another time, said Cesare. It seemed even zombies were reluctant to undergo body-corpse remodeling.
So, are there new documents? Asked Vandaloo.
No, I was hoping that you would consider the issue of currency.
I see.
Various systems had been put into place in Talosheim thanks to Cesare. Vandaloo had not ordered him to create these, nor had anyone else asked Cesare to do it, but he had taken the initiative and advised Vandaloo to create a government. Because of this, the national flag had become a black and white circle, using a solar eclipse as its motif, and all kinds of documents had been created. Incidentally, laws had been created using laws Talosheim had used in the past, as well as the laws of the Hartner Duchy as references. They weren't of much use now, however. Naturally, Cesare pressing Vandaloo to introduce currency was the next step. Your Majesty, it is certainly true that there are currently no problems with bartering for goods. However, the introduction of currency is absolutely necessary for the development of our nation. Even if the commercial trade that you desire with the Orbomb Kingdom becomes a reality one day.
Wouldn't it be fine to handle trading with the Orbomb Kingdom by introducing the Orbomb Kingdom's currency? I don't really intend on making Talosheim an independent nation or anything, said Vandaloo.
How could this be? You would sell the nation, Your Majesty?
I was thinking that Talosheim should aim to be a self-governing domain within the Orbomb Kingdom with no diplomatic rights.
Your Majesty, it is simply madness to willingly stoop to becoming a vassal nation to the Orbomb Kingdom. Please reconsider your decision. Vandaloo sighed. Despite Cesare's words, Vandaloo had been aiming to become an honorary nobleman in the Orbomb Kingdom from the very beginning. After that, things would depend on what happened to Talosheim, whether the undead and ghouls gained human rights or not, and whether Vandaloo managed to dispose of the purebreed vampires. But if things went well, he intended to have Talosheim become a self-governing dominion of the Orbomb Kingdom. The chances of this becoming a reality were probably quite small, but Vandaloo thought that this would provide the most benefits. Of course, if this was impossible, the Orbomb Kingdom probably had exceptional diplomats he could make deals with while managing the nation, but would he need dozens of experienced undead from political families?
Well, that's for the future, so let's leave it aside for now. You mentioned currency, didn't you? I intend to depart for the Hartner Duchy before the day is over, so won't you consider it after that?
Said Vandaloo. Vandeloo was already 7 years old, and the season was summer. According to his plans, he should have already been heading for the Hartner Duchy by now. His objective was to register at the guild. For underage individuals to work as adventurers, they needed to enroll and graduate at the adventurers' school. However, registration is possible even without enrolling at the school. G-Class adventurers who have just registered at the Adventurers Guild can only accept manual work in towns, so there is no need for them to learn at the school. Only those intending to rise to F-Class and beyond enroll at the school. At least this was true for the Orbaum Kingdom's Adventurers Guild of 200 years ago. In the future, Vandeloo also intended to rise to F-Class and beyond, gain achievements to his name and become an honorary nobleman. But right now he intended to register, acquire a guild card, and return to Talosheim without enrolling at the Adventurers' School. The reason for this was,
I want to register before my status becomes even more outrageous than it is now.
This sentence summarized that reason. A registration card, commonly known as a guild card, would be issued when Vandeloo registered at the guild. But Vandeloo's status would be displayed in full to the guild staff member issuing him the guild card. In other words, Vandeloo's titles of Ghoul King, Eclipse King, and Taboo Name, his previously undiscovered jobs such as Undead Tamer and Soulbreaker, the unknown skill that was Death Attribute Magic, his astoundingly named unique skill Godslayer, and even the curses placed upon him by Rodcart would all be displayed. It was already looking quite bad, but there was no saying that more terrible things would not appear on his status. Thus, Vandeloo's plan was to register now before it got any worse, and then make a dash back to Talosheim before an uproar occurred. Of course, Vandeloo had another objective of investigating what became of the first Princess Levia, Borkus's daughter, and the others who escaped to the Hartner Duchy from Talosheim 200 years ago. Like ghouls, Titans lived for 300 years, so he would probably be able to find out by asking Titans in a town. It would be nice if they were healthy, but if they were too healthy and were currently planning the revival of Talosheim, it would be problematic. Perhaps not, if they were understanding towards undead.
I'll bring back currency from the Orbaum Kingdom, so let's examine that and think about it then,
said Vandeloo. The Amid Empire used a unified currency issued by the Empire, but in the Orbaum Kingdom, each duchy and royal capital city issued its own currency. In other words, there were 14 kinds of currency. Bombs, a unit of currency valid all over the Orbaum Kingdom, circulated in combination with the currency issued in each duchy. Because of this, despite all being part of the same nation, towns on the boundaries between duchies had currency exchange facilities. Peddlers working in multiple duchies had to constantly be mindful of the currency exchange rates. In addition to the above, there had apparently been cases of older currencies being replaced by newer currencies in the Orbaum Kingdom's history. It wasn't simply a matter of the face of the king engraved on the coins being changed. The metallic ratios of the coins would change, so they would have different values as well. Therefore, it was possible that new coins might have been created sometime in the past 200 years.
The Orbaum Kingdom lost one duchy in the war of 6 years ago, but that doesn't change the fact that things are complicated, so we have to be careful if we're going to create our own currency.
It would be problematic if the value of Talosheim's currency plummeted in the distant future due to differences in the coin's metallic ratios. Vandeloo had learned in class that this had happened in Japan in the past. Cesare appeared surprised for some reason.
You still intend to go to the Hartner Duchy?
What do you mean, still? Vandeloo asked.
Of course I do.
But you have already postponed your departure for 7 days.
There are various reasons for that. Various reasons.
Though Vandaloo said this, he couldn't deny that he had continued to postpone his departure for 7 days. The ones going to the Hartner Duchy were Vandaloo, the ninja unit of Zran and Braga, and Eleonora, who was exceptional as an infiltrating spy. That was the plan. Vandaloo would go to the city of the Hartner Duchy, take a look around, and check whether there was any reaction from Danger Sense death. After that, he would call the ninja unit and Eleonora. This was what he had discussed with everyone months ago, but—
No way, I'm going with you,
Pavina squealed. Going, Rahapisage groaned.
No way, I want to go with— I cannot do this,
Sidiris wailed.
Pavina, I'm just going there and coming straight back, so it might not even take 10 days, said Vandaloo. Roppy, you'd cause an uproar if you went near areas where people live, so you can't come. And Sidiris, you don't have to do that if you're going to be embarrassed about it.
Pavina, Rahapisage, and for some reason Sidiris held him back. Pavina and Rahapisage were quickly pacified, but Sidiris was depressed, asking herself, How unbecoming of my age! What am I doing? By the time Vandaloo cheered her up, the sun had already set. Giving up on departing that day, Vandaloo spent the entire evening playing with Varby, Jadal, and the other children. The second day, Vandaloo decided he would leave today. Suddenly, the sky became dark, and before he knew it, he was kidnapped and taken into the sky. It seemed that Kanohen, the Union of Bones, had kidnapped him from behind.
I'm intending to leave today, said Vandaloo. Now, I can't really bring you with me.
Nobody in Talosheim was aware yet that a Union of Bones was a monster that would be designated as a disaster, but even so, it was not difficult to imagine that there would be a huge uproar if a mass of bones went near a town.
Once I register at the guild, I'll get a familiar's certificate for you.
As Vandaloo tried to persuade Kanohen into letting him down while being taken on a scenic flight, the sun set. The third day, Vandaloo decided that he would definitely leave today, wondering why there was a lot of buzzing and why the sky had become so dark. He was kidnapped into the sky.
I thought I was having déjà vu, but it's cemetery bees this time.
Several dozen cemetery bees had grabbed Vandaloo. They flew up to their nest that had been built in a way that made it look like part of the royal castle. And then they offered him honey and insects. Were they trying to dissuade him from leaving by offering this food?
I'll be coming back,
Vandaloo reassured them. The cemetery bees made clicking noises.
Yes, really, so please stop trying to make me eat caterpillar dangos. At least boil or fry them.
Fried caterpillar dongos with honey on top were delicious, being crispy on the outside and syrupy on the inside. If the honey was replaced with salty, sweet tare sauce, they might make good side dishes or snacks to eat while drinking alcohol. The fourth day.
Will you really be all right? Perhaps it would be better if you waited till you leveled up a bit more. After all, you did say that your level really wasn't increasing these days, weren't you?
Today, Darcia, who happened to be awake in the morning, was stopping Vandaloo.
It's fine, Mom, said Vandaloo, reassuring her. I've just hit a wall a bit early on. It's not like I've become weaker.
As Darcia said, Vandaloo had entered a phase of development where his level suddenly became very difficult to increase, commonly referred to as a wall. His progress was indeed slow, but he hadn't suddenly become weaker or become unable to do things today that he had been able to do yesterday. And it wasn't as if his development would be stalled here forever. It was well known that walls could be overcome. In fact, Kachia had encountered the same problem. She had now overcome that wall and was currently leveling up as fast as she did once in the past. The thickness of the wall and the timing of encountering it vary. There are those who give up and say that this is their limit, but there are also many who surpass it and grow even further. The percentage of adventurers who give up increases with the second wall, however. Walls are something that adventurers encounter once they become D-class. Those quickly able to overcome this wall are determined to have talent, and they attempt to become C-class, while those like Katya, who cannot immediately overcome it, experience a long slump. Incidentally, the former A-class adventurer Borkus had encountered 3 of these walls, and was still attempting to overcome the 4th when he was defeated by Mikhail.
Looking at it another way, this means that I'm as strong as a D-class adventurer right now, said Vandaloo. I think making a little trip to the city and coming back will be a piece of cake.
Vandaloo's words were something that any D-class adventurer in this world would deny. Darcia would agree with them.
No, Darcia cried. I don't want to be separated from you. Take me with you, just as you've done up until now. I want to bring you as well, but it's a little dangerous, said Vandaloo.
It was possible that Vandaloo's belongings would be thoroughly searched by the gatekeepers as he entered the city. If by some chance they found Darcia's bone fragment and somehow realized that her spirit was possessing it, it would be troublesome. If the gatekeepers called for people or tried to purify Darcia's spirit, Vandaloo would be forced to run, even if he had to kill the gatekeepers to do so.
It would be problematic if I had to fire death bullets in random directions, don't you think?
Indeed, it would be problematic. If Vandaloo did something like that in front of the city's gates, it wouldn't be only the gatekeepers' lives at risk. The walls around the gate would turn into a mountain of rubble. In fact, it wasn't clear if rubble would even be left.
Fine, Darcia agreed reluctantly, but make sure you come back safe, she added. Yes, of course, Mom, said Vandaloo.
And so the sun set today as well. The 5th day.
Huh?
Vandaloo let out a flat-toned, scream-like noise as he was kidnapped by the immortal Ents. Judging from his limp body, it seemed that he had given up on resisting. The 6th day.
Kid, about the letter I gave you to give my daughter, if you see her,
said Borkus.
If she's having a hard time, give her this as well. Holy Son, if you meet Levia-sama, please give this to her,
Nuaza requested.
This as well, Your Majesty.
My luggage is already 3 times my size, said Vandaloo.
Sorting out his luggage took time, so his departure was delayed yet another day. And now today was the 7th day.
I've convinced everyone, and the factories will keep producing miso, soy sauce, katsuboshi, smoked food, mayonnaise, and ketchup for 100 years, even if I'm not here. I am fully prepared. All I have to do now is move my feet,
Vandaloo said eagerly.
Vandaloo-sama, there is something of a problem,
Eleonora said reluctantly as she appeared.
A problem, Vandaloo repeated. Braga and the others ended up going to a dungeon yesterday. They might not return for a few days, Eleonora told him.
It seemed that the ninja unit had been unable to endure the trip being postponed day after day and had left to do some training in a dungeon.
It can't be helped, said Vandaloo. Let's head out first. If I leave undead to communicate with, I'm sure they can meet up with us later.
Communication undead, used like familiars, could be used like cell phones. The distance for making calls was small, and his voice wouldn't be heard exactly as it was because it would be the undead's tongue speaking for him. But these were revolutionary undead in the world of Lambda. They had the appearance of shrunken goblin heads. They had the most terrible design. Using freshly severed human heads would provide better function, but Vandaloo would be arrested if he was caught with them, so he had abandoned this idea.
Now then, shall we go?
said Vandaloo.
Yes, Vandaloo-sama,
Eleonora replied.
A journey with just the two of us. No, Eleonora, you're going to be waiting at the tunnel, you know.
Though this was an unlikely scenario, it would be troublesome if the town's gates had anti-vampire defense mechanisms in place. Even if Vandaloo did not take this into account, he also had to be wary of the information network of the pure-breed vampires who worshipped Hihiryushukaka, the evil god of joyful life. He had to be wary of things like the magic items that allowed the pinpointing of the owner of a blood sample. However, he had come to the conclusion that there would be nothing to worry about this time. He didn't know how extensive the vampire's information network was, but they would never expect him to be able to reopen the tunnel. Also, they didn't seem to be such a large and careful organization that they would have people hiding in every town and village. There would be some informants in major cities, but it seemed that they wouldn't have any regular towns and villages unless there were some special circumstances. At the very least, this was how the information network was arranged in the Empire and Merg Shield Nation, according to Eleonora's knowledge. And as for the magic items, they were seized during the defense of Talosheim. Even if there were more of the same item, they would be running low on Eleonora's blood, which was necessary to operate them. And even if they did encounter subordinates of the pure-breed vampires, Vandaloo was confident that he would be able to dispose of almost any of them.
That's how it is, so let's go, said Vandaloo.
Have a safe trip, Van-sama, said Tarja.
Please make sure you come back to me.
Tarja, Van is going to come back to us, Bestia reminded her. Bo-chan, please use me, Sam, as your legs in your next journey, said Sam. And so the whole nation saw Vandaloo off as he and Eleonora departed Talosheim for the Hartner Duchy. 3 days were spent flying while occasionally being attacked by pterodons and bird-type monsters, and then 3 more days were spent to pass through the tunnel that Vandaloo had turned into golems in order to repair. Vandaloo had ordered the golems sealing the tunnel's exit to step aside, and finally arrived in the Orbom Kingdom that he had set his sights on so long ago. There was nothing at the tunnel's exit other than a sparsely forested plain with the remains of a road on it, however. It had apparently been a magnificent highway 200 years ago, when the Hartner Duchy was trading with Talosheim, but there were only traces of it left now.
If we travel east for 3 hours, the city we are headed for should be there, but I wonder if it's still there, said Eleonora. It's apparently a city of several thousand, so it probably is, isn't it? Said Vandaloo. There should be areas inhabited by people at the very least, since the Hartner Duchy shouldn't have fallen to ruin. Well then, you wait here, Eleonora. I'll use the communication undead to contact you.
All right, but will you be fine on your own? Asked Eleonora.
It's fine, I can do this alone,
said Vandaloo. Should he have added, to the end of the sentence? As Vandaloo asked himself this foolish question, he left the worried-looking Eleonora behind and set out walking along the remains of the road. He was actually accompanied by a large number of spirits, so he really wasn't alone, however. In addition, the golem sealing the tunnel's exit was camouflaged and only set to open when the password was spoken. The password was brains flying sideways repeatedly. It wasn't something that would ever be spoken by coincidence. A simple accommodation had been built inside the tunnel near the wall. Eleonora was to stay there and wait for the ninja unit that would be coming afterwards.
I suppose it's about time,
Vandaloo muttered to himself. Walking through the grass that was taller than him had become bothersome, so he was using flight to fly over it silently. If it weren't for the luggage he was carrying on his back, it was possible that he would be mistaken for a ghost. Though this was not the reason, sometimes goblins and giant ravens with 1.5-meter wingspans attacked him. Vandaloo quickly repelled them. He didn't need any particularly clever plans to defeat rank 1 or 2 monsters. Of course, he could not gain experience points because of his curse, but this was a trivial matter that he wasn't concerned about at all. Goblins wielding tree branches charged at him with strange cries. Vandaloo let out a strange, unmotivated-sounding cry in response, as he disposed of them by throwing rocks at them, using the throwing skill that he had acquired after training with the ninja unit.
About 1 in 5 of the rank 2 giant ravens gives me a magic stone, though. If I could get them, I could at least use them to pay the toll fee.
In the Bon Gaia continent, it was normal for towns and villages to charge a toll fee to enter them. As Vandaloo had no bombs, the currency of the Orbom Kingdom, he had included salt in his luggage that he thought would be able to pay as a substitute. He had given up on the idea of using the magic stones and materials of high-rank monsters, as people might cause a fuss and wonder why such a young child would possess such things. The Hartner Duchy had no seas and no rock salt to mine, so he had brought valuable salt with him.
If a rock salt mine had been discovered in the past 200 years and the value of salt has dropped, I suppose I have no choice but to hunt monsters.
Or perhaps Vandaloo would look for non-monster rabbits, which he hadn't done in a while.
Come to think of it, the fresh rabbit blood that Mom gave me was delicious.
Immersed in his memories, Vandaloo beat yet another goblin to death and pressed forward. A distant wall made of stone came into view.
I can finally see it. But there's quite a lot of moss and ivy growing on the walls, even though I heard from Borkus and the others that this was quite a prosperous city.
This was the commercial city that had connected Talosheim and the Hartner Duchy together. It had been constructed hastily after the commercial trading between the two began, so its history was shallow, but Vandaloo had heard that it had been a lively city. Perhaps because of the commercial trade disappearing with Talosheim's destruction, the city had gone into a decline. In fact, Vandaloo got the feeling there were too many monsters like goblins and giant ravens near the city. He hadn't been near a normal town since Evbegia, so he couldn't be sure, though.
It couldn't possibly be just a ruin now.
Succumbing to anxiety, Vandaloo used the Detect Life spell across a vast area. He detected over 1,000 responses in the center of the city. It seemed that the city had declined but had not become a ruin. There was a large number of reactions that were stronger than the average person's, but they were probably adventurers and soldiers who had been stationed there.
Ah, that's good.
Letting out a sigh of relief, Vandaloo set his feet back on the ground and began walking towards the city's gates. As he did so, the gatekeeper that noticed him began making a noise that sounded like Vandaloo had stopped using flight so that he wouldn't startle them, but it seemed that this was pointless. The gatekeeper, with dark green skin, a long nose, long ears, and slanted eyes.
Let's face reality, Vandaloo told himself. That's a goblin.
Judging from the fact that it was raising its spear, it seemed to be a rank 2 goblin soldier. On the other side of the doorless gates, there were countless goblins pointing in Vandaloo's direction and shrieking as they ran towards him. There was one particularly large goblin who was the size of an adult human among the other chest-high goblins, letting out a shriek. Unlike the other crudely armed goblins, it was equipped with proper armor, a shield, and a halberd. It seemed that this was a goblin king.
Wow, this is the first time I've met a king other than myself,
said Vandaloo in a monotonous tone as he released death bullets. And so began the battle between two kings, the Ghoul King and the Goblin King.